In 1999, 4 comic book managers came together to found Image Design Works, also known as IDW. The company was originally meant to be a graphic design firm working for entertainment companies, but they soon branched out into the publishing business. The company's first big hit came in the early 2000s, with 30 Days of Night. This dark horror series, which put IDW on the map, focused on vampires and the actions they take to stave off their own rabid bloodlust. You know, not unlike bronies, whose lust for pony content, no, not like that, led Hasbro to consider other avenues of pony content. By this point, IDW was already licensing Hasbro's properties like Transformers and G.I. Joe, but ponies? Could it work? It ran for 102 issues plus like 10 spin-offs, which are still going today, so yeah, it was a big hit. The announcement was well received in summer of 2012, with most bronies and comic fans being really excited. The art looked great, and the main duo behind it were fans of the show. You know, what more could you want? The first issue was IDW's most successful book of 2012, with over 10,000 pre-orders. But what about me, huh? I'm the one making the video. What do I think about the comics? They're great. As a hardcore pony fan, these are exactly the type of thing I'd want. It stays true to the show while having its own distinct flares. Yeah, there were actually a few different teams working on these. I would really recommend people check these out. There's a whole world of stuff here that other fans of the show would really love. From the stories, to the art, to the everything else. The separation from the show means we get some unique stuff, but it also gets a little crazy. So let's take a look. I'll be your tour guide as we take a look at the My Little Pony comics by IDW. I was originally going to separate this video into chapters or parts like a normal person, but since we're talking about comic books, I figured we call these volumes, just to be a little fun. Volume 1, comics are confusing and dumb and you need like a flowchart to tell you which ones to read in order. Historically, comics have never been too easy to try and read in order, but thankfully MLP isn't too bad. Main series, easy, except for the 2021 annual, which you need to read sometime near the end because it's part of a story. And then there's the micro series, which came out alongside the main series. This is kind of like the Sonic universe of MLP, but not really. Micro series only had like 10 issues, each devoted to a main character, then was followed up with Friends Forever, which ran until 2016. The main series keeps going, but from that point I'm pretty sure you can just read any of these spin-offs in order. Nightmare Nights, Legends of Equestria, Spirits of the Forest, Ponyville Mysteries, and all those others. Of course, you can't forget annuals, the movie tie-in, crossovers, and the odd one-off. They did only one MLP What If, where Prince Blueblood was in place of Twilight, but they never did anything else with it. Of course, with all this material, I'm gonna be frank, not all of it is worth your time. The best stuff is gonna be coming out of the main series, with Friends Forever and Micro Series having some good material as well. Micro Series I thought was really cool because they were actually put in toy stores, bundled in with like little coloring pages and stuff. You know, that's how you actually reach non-comic fans, people. Listen, all I'm gonna say is that I never would have read those Archie Sonics unless they had the brilliant idea to put them in the magazine section of Stop and Shop. They knew what they were doing. But enough of that, on to the actual stories. I want to go over those for a bit so you can get an idea of what they're like. Volume 2, Lore. I feel like in the fandom, there's a divide between people who've read the comics and people who don't. Reading these is like escaping the Matrix. There's just so much comic-exclusive lore and story stuff that fans of the show aren't privy to. The return of Queen Chrysalis is the very first arc of the series, just having the main six go and track down Queen Chrysalis to save the Cutie Mark Crusaders. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really remember a time that the CMC got to do anything really spectacular, outside of the occasional Ponyville-wide fight scene, or in Friends Forever 38 where Sweetie Belle got strapped onto Celestia for the three-legged race. Yeah. The first arc is a great start, and was originally going to be a limited series from what I recall, but you know how bronies are. They ran this into the ground. The one right after where they go to the moon is good as well. Nay Anything and the one right after are absolute classics. I love the Oingo Boingo parody that they make Shining Armor sing. What I will say about that one is that I think it's a little weird that they make him a nerd. I don't know, I always assumed he and Cadence were like a jock and his jock girlfriend respectively, but you know, what are you gonna do? According to interviews, this is just Katie Cook, the main author, writing what she knows. Reflections and Seas of the Crystal Empire are two big ones you always hear about. These are up there with some of the specials from the actual show. Both of them involve Sombra in some way, and manage to give him some sort of character, which is really cool. Reflections especially. They give him this whole backstory and even a GF. Also, these things show up, which are absurdly scary looking for an all-ages comic book. I won't spoil the ending for Crystal Empire, but let me just say it's pretty much the least canon out of anything that happens in these comics. You know, besides Big Mac and Luna. There's one with an evil girl Discord I thought was really fun. I was praying it would be his sister so I could reference the DVD trailer for The Little Mermaid 2, but no.
Ursula's crazy sister!
Discord's crazy ex-girlfriend. It would have been funny, okay? There's a pirate adventure, a cowboy adventure, a forest adventure with these deer characters who I'm pretty sure were based on something from Lauren Faust's original pitch Bible. There's also the season 10 arc, which was the last in the main series. I get the same vibe from this that I get from like the season 7 finale. It just feels like they wanted to add some new lore, but it's not too interesting. Okay, so get this. Besides the normal one, there are actually like 7 elements of harmony, sets of elements of harmony, that were created by these knights of said harmony. But we can't have the pony elements be made by the Knights of Harmony because there's an origin for those. So they actually made 6 and the pony ones happen separately and are just connected to them. And there are like 80 million new characters. Not the best for what is pretty much the last big adventure for these characters. The cowboy one is really fun just for the fact that these ponies are trying to bend the law so that this bull guy doesn't get the deeds of the farm. Like, the whole thing is about Twy not using her magic against him because she's a princess and that would be an abuse of power. But they're literally just moving his house with magic, so the deed isn't valid. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's illegal, but okay. Speaking of bureaucracy, there's a 2-part story later on where Twy and a bunch of archivists from different kingdoms have to go find this document, otherwise the Griffins are gonna seize a bunch of land from Equestria. Yeah, pretty sure they wouldn't have thrilling plot lines like that in the show, but for real. I like how with the medium and the fact that these are really being fueled by brony demand, that they can do more mature stuff like this. You know, relatively mature. Plus, you know, let epic pop culture references. Look, it's Peanuts. I know Peanuts. Listen, it's not as obnoxious as the show can be, and another perk of this being a comic book is that you can experience it at your own pace. Oh no, the story is lagging a bit. Flip, 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 flip. The best stories here are really the big adventures in my opinion. Oh yeah, also I'm pretty sure this is when they give Star Swirl an actual character. He's a little less straight-laced than he is in the show. You know, remember when the joke in the show was that nobody knew who he was? And then they made him like this important historical figure, literally the magic teacher of both the immortal princess goddesses. More lore can be found in some of the spin-offs. Legends of Equestria talks about the pillars, you know, if you like that. Fiendship is magic. Backstories for all your favorite MLP villains. T-Rex has daddy issues, the Sirens were banished by Star Swirl the Bearded to the EG world, etc. Pretty sure the Siren thing was mentioned in the movie, but if not, that's one of the many instances of the show taking stuff from the comic. That's right, my little bronies. Volume 3. Are the comics canon to the show? Aside from one big thing that I can think of off the top of my head, no. But everything else feels very well like it could be. Aside from the characters who only show up in the comic and not the series, vice versa. Hashtag RIP King Aspen. The closest show-accurate designs we have for the comic characters is in the MLP Gameloft game, which takes literally any character they can do to anything to wring more money out of those poor defenseless bronies and or children. Ogres and Oubliettes is the one big thing that they take from the comics, although in the comic it's called Oubliettes and Ogres. T-Rex daddy issues also get a reference in the FIM finale. Along with that, there are plots that they just straight up repeat in the show, like AJ trying to catch a creature in the orchard, Pinkie Pie finding someone who makes people laugh and trying to cheer him up, Rarity as a noir detective. They even do one where the Flim Flam brothers break up as friends. Suspicious. If there's one thing that the show got from the comics, I'm gonna guess that the later characterization of Celestia and Luna was based on some of these. I know the Brony tribute from season 4 was really the first, I think, but the comics always had these really goofy depictions of the two, at least in the more lighthearted stories. In the earlier seasons of the show, there were these noble, straight-faced rulers who, you know, like to have a little fun in that cheeky authority figure letting loose way, but later seasons sometimes you see them casually bickering, fighting with each other. A royal problem where they get their cutie mark switched, and the one where they go on the vacation, you know, instantly come to mind. That second one especially, it literally feels like the show writers wanted to do something like the comics. Well, you know, the finale of Friends Forever will always be better than that one. Joe would not dare. Late-stage characters like Starlight and Trixie honestly don't have much to do. If anything, Zecora is the one usually getting more time in the spotlight from what I remember. And thank goodness, dude, Zecora is like the most underrated character ever. She has more to do here than in the entire show, especially during the season 10 arc. She also gets some really great art. Oh yeah, speaking of the art, Volume 4, I can finally gush about the art. Andy Price is the main guy behind the look of the comic, and this guy is an absolute legend. Dare I say, a genius. The way he's able to get so much expression action out of these characters, while keeping that original cuteness that Lauren Faust had in her original art for the show. The big difference here, I'd say, is that it's much more elastic. All the ponies look so fluid and dynamic. That's not even beginning to talk about the panel layouts, which are also really fun. I love whenever they switch it up or do little flourishes like in the Halloween special with the Young Six, or during the first part where the panel borders are made of changeling goo, or here in the Shining Armor one. This style of text you see a lot is great. The main example I'm thinking of right now is the micro series comic with Rarity, the variant cover for that, and the covers he does. Some of these are so fun, like this one, which is apparently a tribute to this one Norman Rockwell painting. This one where they're all in 80s outfits, any with just the main six or whoever hanging out are so fun. The Christmas one, this Muppets one. The more dramatic covers are spectacular too, my main example being this variant for issue 4. Price has this great eye for shading, whether with ink or with these really vibrant colored pencil drawings. I have never thought of the word eye candy in relation to any sort of visual art until now, I'm being serious. It's so colorful and the composition is just so great. This cover for issue 10 with all the fan favorite ponies genuinely might be one of, if not the most iconic comic book cover from the last 20 years. I'm not even joking. I think I want to go to andypriceart.bigcartel.com and buy a print and support him. I don't know. Yeah, the art is a big drawing point for these. As someone who's trying to make comics, there's always the problem of panel flow, and the Price/Cook issues have that down. I also love whenever there's a lot to look at in a certain thing, not just, a background, but interesting things going on in it. The character expressions, posing, composition, also, do a really great job telling the story. If anything, it makes all the other artists look bad by comparison. In fact, you can see a lot of varying art styles in just the 2 main series alone. Brenda Hickey needs to be mentioned too because she's one of my favorites, probably one of the only artists who matches the energy of Andy Price, but with her own unique twist. I really like this issue of Friends Forever, where Pinkie Pie gets addicted to these cookies and Twilight has to get her off them. Hijinks ensue. There's that same sensory overload that I really like. Tony Fleecs is another main artist, and I think he does his job well. He doesn't stand out too much, but that's better than it being jarring. J.P. Foskett is a freak. Every character he draws looks like Porky Pig, and I don't know how to feel about it. He did this one story where Celestia turns into a regular pony, and Discord is there, and he looks like this. I think his art is really good, if not very unusual compared to others you see. There's clearly a lot of dynamism, and as much as the hyper-cartoony faces might bother some people, I think they can be really cute at times. At the end of the day, you can tell this guy knows his stuff. I would have loved, actually, if they got more one-off random guest artists. Things that always come to mind are like the SpongeBob comics or the Simpsons comics, if anybody's ever read those, where they have a bunch of random stories. At least that's, what I remember. My experience with comics is not that deep. Ben Bates is a name you see very rarely come up, but his art makes such a big impact. He illustrated the 2014 annual with the Power Ponies, the actual fake comic book from the show, and it sells the whole superhero thing so well. The micro series issue for the Cutie Mark Crusaders is also a highlight. The perspective, panel flow, the shading. Agnes Garboska has worked on a lot of issues, probably one of the main names you're going to see if you're trying to read the comics in order. From interviews, I can tell she's a really nice person who has a passion for the stuff she works on, but in my opinion, I think her art is a little underwhelming. At least her early stuff. I remember a few later issues were kinda good, but a lot of it comes off as flat and a little uninteresting. I wouldn't mind if her art leaned into that more with a more angular quote-unquote UPA style, or something like an early anime or chibi art style, but the way it looks doesn't feel like the flatness is intentional. There are points where she tries to have the characters look like they exist in a 3D space, and it doesn't make sense when you see so many of these angles where they're just front-facing the camera. As a result, a lot of the stories illustrated by her I'm not really interested in. Compared to the energy or detail of some other artists, you just have ponies standing around. Even if I don't like her art, she still has gotten a lot of work on these, as well as with DC and other companies. That has to say something about her work ethic, her ability to market herself as an artist and make connections, which is a big part of the industry I don't think a lot of people consider. Tony Casisto does these amazing detailed scene layouts that I love, but I think his pony anatomy leaves something to be desired. It's that problem they had in the final seasons of the show, where they just look like they have human faces. Plus, I don't know, these designs give me weird vibes. His ponies remind me of that oddly suggestive brony art you see on Equestria Daily all the time, but again, the backgrounds are amazing. I like the one where they have all the old ladies doing a scavenger hunt and they go all around Ponyville. There's just so much detail in these locations, which are usually stock backgrounds in the show, and that's pretty much an overview of the art. Like I said, you're gonna see some different visions going into it here. Of course, I can't not mention the variant covers. Every issue pretty much has at least 2, and a lot of them are spectacular. Aside from the Andy Price covers, you see a lot by Sarah Richard, who does these really cool like watercolor, pencil, flowy art style things. It's so cool. Stephanie Bashima has these really cutesy variant covers that, yes, look a little too similar to key art from the show, but they have this soft shading and are composed super well. These just look so comfy, like prime FIM. Some variants are even exclusive to certain retailers and conventions. Do a little Google search and go to mlpmerch.com and look up My Little Pony comic variant covers if you just want to look at some cool art. Some of the limited series and annuals even have their own artists. Like, I know the Classics Reimagined series they're doing now is illustrated by this one person. The style is certainly unique, but you can tell it's not bad art. I understand what Jenna Ayub was trying to do with it just by looking at it. Speaking of that, let's talk about some of the more recent developments in the comics. Besides the Gen 5 stuff, because that's a whole other rabbit hole. Volume 5. Crossovers. The good, the bad, and they just straight up traced from the show. Okay, so besides the things that haven't come out yet at the time, like the 40th anniversary special and the full Wizard of Oz thing, let's talk about some of the recent crossovers. In the past few years, they've done 2 whole MLPX Transformers stories, the first one taking place in the My Little Pony world, and the second in the Transformers world. I think they did it the best way they could, just having little vignette stories with the ponies and Transformer characters each interacting, and then one big final battle, where they all come together. I swear, if I had to actually care about Transformers lore for this, I would have just quit the video. I was not ready to read a whole story. I think your enjoyment of these 2 really hinges on your enjoyment for both properties, you know, obviously. Pretty sure Transformer fans who don't like My Little Pony won't get much out of this, and vice versa. I don't know. I just don't get Transformers. I feel like an evil boardroom executive saying this, but there's just nothing relatable about it. Like, there's a reason almost every reboot has to have the human character who hangs out with the big car robots, you know? And they're like aliens who have been around for thousands of years, but they can turn into cars that only exist in 1986. It's so stupid. And the girl ones all have shapely bodies with these wide metal robot hips, and they look like they're wearing little undies. Dude, it's one of those kids franchises that I didn't grow up liking, so now I guess I feel like I'm free from some sort of mind virus. At least the art is good. They have artists from both series working on these, so you get to see some new interpretations of the ponies. And a lot of the stories are action-based, so that was fun to see as well. I think there is a lot you could get out of this, and they did the story in the best way I think they could. It really is just pure fan service. Speaking of fan service, My Little Pony Generations came out from mid-2021 to early 2022. This one I thought would be so cool, but it's really disappointing. From my understanding, this was hyped up as this big crossover between G1 and G4, but that's not at all what this is. The actual G1 part of it comes in only halfway through, really, and they don't even do anything with the old pony characters. They don't even have a lineup of the main 6 and their 80s counterparts. They don't even have the old Spike. Like, what they do have is Minty's 2003 redesign and Bon Bon from the 1993 My Little Pony Tales cartoon, 2 different things from the 80s show. Wow, sure hope somebody was fired for it. It feels to me like they wrote this one random story and were like, oh, what if we loosely tied it to G1? The villains are the daughters of the witches from the movie, and they don't even look like they fit into the world. It feels like the movie was the only thing the team researched, you know, as well as the first page of Google Images. I know I sound like I should be locked in a padded cell or something for demanding this be up to my ridiculously high standards as a My Little Pony fanatic or whatever, but in a premise that's inherently fan servicey, I think they would need to make sure they knew their stuff. And, you know, even the art isn't all that special. There are parts here that are just clearly traced from the show. Volume 6, a list of things that are canon in the My Little Pony comics. Okay, we're just gonna get back to the positives here. If I haven't recommended the series enough, I just want to give a list of things I noticed that indeed do happen to be part of My Little Pony canon according to the comics. Rarity once laughed so hard she brapped in a hot tub. Big Mac gets shipped with Princess Luna, this random Wonderbolt, and like every pony else. Shining Armor sings a cover of Little Girls by Oingo Boingo, and this other guy is literally dressed up as 80s Danny Elfman playing the xylophone. Shirley has a twin sister who's a wrestler, and Shirley has to take her place, and now she's a wrestler who looks like Porky Pig. Ponyville has a civil war, the ponies drink some bad water, and Applejack turns into Donald Trump, and Pinkie Pie turns into the Joker. Ponyville has an election, and there's all this conflict, including Rarity having to pay more taxes. Oh no. The town gets invaded by evil apples who literally take it over and turn it into a police state, so the main 6 have to turn into vampire bat ponies to eat all of them them and get rid of them. Also, I need to mention that this one has an amazing variant cover. Also, there's a new fan favorite pony, whose name I really cannot say on YouTube, but it's the brown one, the brown telegram pony. Volume 7. Now, what issues do I recommend and where to find them? In my opinion, here's a list of issues I'd say are worth reading if you want some good old-fashioned pony comic action. Those are really the big ones. I especially recommend Reflections, Nay Anything, The Sand and Gazebo Repair. Issue 24 is a pretty fun Discord one-off. 41 and 42 have some of the best art in the entire series. 41 was apparently all done in physical media. It's so cool. They go for the style of a kid's book, but they switch it up in so many parts. It's something to behold. Same with issue 42, which has a lot of art style shakeup and even uses real photos. There's even a part where it looks like you can have little cutouts. It's amazing. Those issues I'd really prefer to buy digitally, along with any of the ones with the more involved art, but there also is something to be said about being able to hold it in your own hands. For that, I'd recommend looking them up on Amazon or any real book site. Pretty sure you could find some individual issues at your local comic book store if you look. If I'm gonna recommend specific volumes, Omnibus 1 is a pretty good buy because you've got issues 1 through 12 in one collection, or you could pick up volumes 1 through 3. Volume 5, 7, 9, 17 all have some of the better arcs. Friends Forever is collected in volumes as well, and so is the micro series. Some of the limited spin-off series can also be found in volumes, I think. How you want to read these really depends on what you prefer. Like I said, I'm a zoomer who's used to looking at screens and being able to make the picture bigger and smaller at will, but do what you gotta do. Like I said before, there really is a big difference between MLP fans who have read the comics and fans who haven't. As a hardcore MLP fan, I recommend them. I feel like they're MLP's best kept secret, this magical world of stories that are more interesting than the average episode. At worst, I will admit they aren't that good, but the ones worth checking out are worth checking out. Before we end, I want to give a special shout out to my Act Your supporters on Patreon. The Fox's Raven, Nana, Jesse Ball, I've Got Frostbite, Kaylee Lahota, Rosa, Grimamerk, Shadewalker, Knife Girl, The Blazing Pegasus, Jason Ferguson, Technicolor, Jack Ketchman, Paisley, Gunnar Clovis, Mavis Likes Bugs, Trixie Best, No Yak Best, Olive, Nighty, SR Nano, Allison Madden, Alex Kincaid, Dashi, A Kawaii Dragon, Keaton Cryer, Cascadiark, Bad Bessie, Damian, Booth Taste, Marshmallow, Madzia, Goose Nerd. I can't think of a better outro. So until next time, goodbye.